Hello, Smile Source. Welcome to this edition of Expert Insights. Today we have Amol with, he's the founder of Patient Prism. He's also a CPA, owns an accounting firm. I would maybe call him a serial entrepreneur, just a really nice, well-connected guy in dentistry. He probably has the largest collection of dental selfies when he's out doing these conventions and things. So we're really excited to hear what he has to say. He's been working with a lot of professionals in our industry. I think he's got some great insights for us today on things that we should all be thinking about in the practices. So I'm going to bring on Amol. Trevor Maurer, I think, is with us as well this morning. Morning, guys. Thanks for joining us, Amol. Really appreciate you taking time.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to talk to your members. Good.
Well, as we all know, we were just talking about, this is the way we communicate nowadays, right? It's how we stay in touch.
It truly is. It's becoming the new normal, and I'm very curious about how much of it we continue using it even after the crisis.
I think we will. So just give our viewers just a quick summary on the things you'd like to share with them today.
Well, I'm going to wear a bunch of hats today. I've been the longest I've been as the CPA in the dental space for 20 years. So I'm going to initially wear a little bit of the CPA hat just to tell people what I'm telling my clients in my CPA firm of what's going on with all the loans and forgiveness and all that stuff. Then we're going to talk a little bit about it. And then I'm going to switch that hat. I'm going to wear my Patient Prism hat, which gives me the opportunity to talk about what practices all over the country, DSOs, group practices, individual practices are doing during this time when they're not seeing any patients or only seeing emergency patients. So just some strategies around communication, connecting with teams, who's doing teledentistry, what's happening with the comeback strategy. There's a lot of people planning around that. I want to talk about that. We're going to talk about some new ideas about COVID testing within dental offices that potentially could be coming up in the next few months. And then talk about our academy, which we're producing a lot of content producing a lot of content that'll help dental practices kind of navigate all the challenges that we're facing today. Financial, emotional, psychological, and everything else that surrounds it. So it's going to be a lot of different things, and I'm going to let everybody ask me questions later on. But the idea is to bring practical insights and tell you what's happening out there in the field, so that you can go back and actually have some action items at the end of this presentation to take home with.
That's awesome. Before I do turn it over to Trevor, I want to share with everybody that make sure you're asking your questions in the live comments. And then secondly, we have a couple of really good guests coming up the next couple of days. Eric Morin with Tower Leadership is coming on tomorrow, Tuesday. And Robert Steiner, or Bo Steiner, I think is what he goes by, is going to be coming on Wednesday. He's with with the SBA, and be able to hopefully give us a lot of insight and updates on what's going on. So we were participating on Friday, had to reschedule, but we're really excited to have him back on Wednesday. Trevor.
Tom.
What's new at the Maurer household? You guys hanging in there?
We are, yeah. Got through Easter weekend, and here we are with our buddy Amol. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you for being here. Sorry that I was in the wrong backstage channel for the pre-meeting here, but thanks for catching me up on everything. Really excited for our membership to hear what you have to say, because you do have a unique perspective with the accounting and the marketing piece. And tying those two together is very, very difficult. I know you do a really outstanding job of it. So I'm excited for the membership to hear you. I'm going to ask our members to share this with their friends. There's a shareable link that's downloadable afterwards. If you need to find it, and if you have any difficulty, just ask anyone on the Smile Source team. We will get it to you. And tonight, remember the fireside chat, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. Mike Maroon's basically end of day happy hour. Please join us there, Smile Source members. And Amol, take it away. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Amol.
Well, good morning. It's April 13th, and I am sitting here in my Atlanta house, talking to you guys about a lot of things that are happening with respect to this crisis. As I said earlier, I've been a CPA all my life. So I've been navigating this crisis from different angles, from an accounting and tax angle, now with the loans that are coming in and advising my clients on what to do. I've also been talking to practices all over the country about what they're doing to survive currently, keep their lights on. What are they doing in terms of communicating with their customers, patients? What are they doing in terms of communicating with their team members? How are they deploying technology right now in their offices to stay connected or to diagnose and treat patients, which is teledentistry? What are they doing with PPE strategies? What's happening with that? The first topic I really want to talk about is wearing my CPA hat, is the importance of having your financials completed. So if you're not in touch with your CPA, I urge you to be in touch with your CPA. Get your financials done all the way up till March 31st. You've got to know where you stood pre the crisis and what's happening to you month by month. Sometimes for us to look at a profit and loss statement and to be able to identify, okay, here's my revenue. I know what my revenue is, but here's my expenses, and to be able to identify. Most of you guys have already figured out what your fixed costs are, or what your variable costs are, and obviously you have eliminated for the most part your variable costs, because if you don't see patients, you're not going to have costs like or supplies and all that stuff. But there's going to be still some fixed costs associated with paying your employees and that whatever skeleton crew you have. But there might be other things on the P&L that sometimes get hidden and that you don't know of. There is some auto debits going out of your bank accounts. And I'm sure you've had people come to you before and tell you that, hey, you need to look at all the auto debits that are coming out of your accounts. Look at all the stuff that's going to automatically credit cards, and have a strategy of either freezing it or doing something with it, so that the cash going out of the bank account is watched. And I'm surprised. What I'm seeing a lot in the dental industry right now, especially with larger organizations, is they're going aggressive with all their vendors, with their landlords, in negotiating either a deferral of rent or for 3 months or 60 days. And you may want to go out there and really talk to anybody and everybody you can to ensure that, because everybody understands you're in a crisis. And if there's ways to help you mitigate some of the outgoing cash, then you should do that. I've seen many landlords across the country provide deferrals of at least 30 days and potentially 60 days of rent. There's a big grocery chain in Florida called Publix, and Publix recently they announced it today that they're giving free rent to all these shopping complexes they own, to all anybody who's a tenant. They are basically waiving the rent for 1 or 2 months, which is a pretty big deal, especially if you thought that this was a fixed expense that I could not control. So look at that stuff. Look at your P&L. Get your balance sheet and your profit and loss statements done, so that you know exactly where you stand and what the outgoing expenses are. Log on to your American Express or Visa, whatever the card, and just make sure that everything is stopped or at least reduced to whatever extent that is. Once you've done that, I'm assuming there's 3 acronyms that are floating around in the loan universe right now. One acronym is called the PPP, which is called the Paycheck Protection Program. Other acronym is EIDL, which is the Emergency Loan Disaster Emergency Loan Assistance. And then there's a new program that has come out by the Federal Reserve, which is called the Market Street Lending Program. And you need to be aware of all these 3 things. I'm sure most of you guys have applied for the PPP, and you're in the process of either getting the approval, or some of you might have received your funds already. And it's a good program, at least in theory. I liked it a lot when it came out first. I wish there were some more tweaks to it. The key, obviously, in this is going to be, how do you manage the cash within an 8-week period after the loan has been disbursed to you? So the timeline that the SBA is telling everybody is that you apply through your bank, you provide them all this information. Approval usually comes within 48 to 72 hours. That's what banks will give you an approval, but we don't know how long the SBA will give the permission to the banks to disperse the funds. And then I think the bank has, I think 5 to 10 days to disperse the funds to you. The initial wisdom was that let's wait and until we are ready to hire and reopen our offices to get the disbursement. But apparently under law, I don't think the banks can wait to disperse it out to you. I think it's 5 to 10 business days after the bank receives its money. I think they have to disperse them to you in 5 business days. So if you get your loan money next week, you're going to need to figure out how to use it accordingly so that you get the maximum forgiveness. And the challenge that I feel, I think the program is interesting because you've got, if you're not ready to open your office till May or middle of May, you have 4 weeks where you don't know where to utilize your resources. Obviously, if you have cut down yourself to a skeleton crew, then hiring the people back just so that you can get forgiveness, you have to evaluate the wisdom of that. If they don't have anything going on, then basically it's a wash for you. So I was hoping that the PPP would extend the timeline from 8 weeks to 16 weeks. That hasn't happened yet. There has been talks in Congress about extending that time period so that you can actually use the money to hire people back when you're ready. Talk to your CPA again about the rules that are required for forgiveness. They are complex. As usual, the government doesn't make anything simple. So they're complex in terms of how you need to think about forgiveness, in terms of how many full-time equivalents you need to have, and what the numerator and the denominator is, super important. You could have 2 denominators based on either 2019 number of employees or 2020. And you need to also make sure that your salaries are in line with what they need to be pre-COVID. So super important to understand where you need to be. As soon as you get the loan, it's super important to know, okay, I had these many employees at this time period between the 19 period and the 20 period, and I have these many employees. I have till June to get everybody back. And this is where I need to be. So you need to figure out what that ramp up looks like. And also in terms of your salaries, you need to know exactly where you need to be so that you are utilizing this to the most benefit. So make sure you're in touch with your CPA, and they're the best people to give you guidance during this time. If you have applied for the EIDL, some of you thought that the $10,000 grant is automatic. They revised guidance on that. Now it's only $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. And EIDL goes in, and that's just the emergency grant that would be forgiven in conjunction with the PPP. There is another program that you can apply through the EIDL for up to $2 million of loans over 30 years. A lot of people have thought about, should we apply for them together? I personally would apply for the PPP. When it gets approved, I would apply for the EIDL. So that's the way that I thought has been the best way to go about that. The Federal Reserve, as part of the CARES Act, there was also a provision for businesses to apply for loans directly through the Federal Reserve. I mean, through your bank, but through the Federal Reserve, and that's $600 billion that's being allocated. The Federal Reserve just came up with new regulations on how this Market Street lending program will work. Again, talk to your CPA about that. It's a little more lenient. It's not forgivable debt, but it's paid over 4 years. The rates are between 2.5% to 4%, and you can borrow up to 4 times your debt to EBITDA ratio. So it's a little complex, but again, ask your CPA about that. If you're larger groups that didn't qualify for the PPP because of the affiliation rules, because of the 500 employees, are now eligible to apply for this. But the good news is you don't have to be a large group to apply. My opinion for 20 years as a CPA, I've always suggested to all my dental folks and everybody else, banks never lend money to you when you need it, and they always lend money to people who actually don't need it, right? So when you need it, you don't get any money. So if you have some capacity to borrow money, that is easy to do right now. Secure the funding. If you don't end up using it, you can always return it back. So we don't know what kind of tightening standards are going to happen. For example, JP Morgan announced yesterday that they're going to tighten up their mortgage lending standards, which means that they know that the economy is going through a recession in the next few months, and people are losing their jobs. So if you haven't applied for a refinance yet, it's a good idea to do it sooner than later. Rates have been the lowest in a generation, even below 3% for 30 years. So just like it's prudent to refinance or your debt now on the home side, it is very prudent to obtain as much financing as you can, even if you don't need it. You can always return it back. That's what I'm saying. You can always return the funding back. But if the credit starts getting tight in the future, you may not be able to get that. And that's why it's also important to have your financials ready and get some sort of a pro forma projection of what could happen if we don't open till May 1st, June 1st, September 1st. I'm hoping it doesn't last that long, but you need to have some planning scenarios set up from your pro forma P&Ls. Pro formas are projections of what will happen in the future, and determine your cash position. And yeah, you might be okay right now because you've collected all your insurance stuff just recently from April. But once that dries up and whatever revenue you're collecting currently through emergencies is not going to be enough. So project out your worst case scenario in terms of what could happen and how long this crisis would last, and maybe double the amount of cash required, because you always think you project enough, then you say, oh my God, I need maybe $500,000 or $150,000, and then double that number at $300,000 just in case, and make sure that combination of the cash you have and the borrowing capacity is adequate to keep you active during this time period. That's a lot about loans. Again, talk to your CPA about this stuff because it's going to be crucial. They will guide you in the right direction to make sure that this is happening. But again, I'm a believer in securing credit when you don't need it, because we don't know what the conditions will look like in the next 3 months. Nobody knows that. The thing that I'm hearing about, so I'm going to pivot this a little bit, conversation from financials, taxes, loans, to my role as a CEO of Patient Prism. And what I have been able to do through our academy is really connect with a lot of experts in the area and consultants in the area that are helping dental practices kind of navigate this stuff. I've also had the luxury to talk to the owners and the CEOs and the operations leaders at practices nationwide in seeing what are they doing now. This presents a very unique opportunity for us that we will probably never get. I hope we never get this in our lifetimes, where this is hopefully a once in a 100-year event. We had it in 1917 with the flu, and now it's now. But hopefully we don't have to go through it again. But it's giving us a unique opportunity to kind of look at our businesses. And I've done the same thing, is look at our businesses and figure out what are we doing currently. And a lot of the larger group practices are really figuring out their business model of what they're doing, their workflows with respect to their team members, their patients. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of DSOs do in the space is figuring out a routine cadence of connecting with all the executive team members and their regional managers, office managers, and having at least a weekly Zoom call or GoToMeeting, whatever technology you use, having a weekly check-in with everybody. And usually that check-in starts with a motivational video about, okay, we're going to get through this. And here's some good motive. All of us need that motivation right now. All of us, we go through days today where we feel very sad. We go through ups and downs emotionally. And so it starts with a motivational video, a check-in with everybody saying, how is everybody doing? Is everybody safe? And really, and spending some of that time then to connect with your team members. And going through some sort of planning around, okay, here are back burner projects that we've had them on, whether it's your playbooks regarding hygiene protocols, whether it's your playbooks regarding case acceptance, whatever they might be. People are going through some of these ideas on what they can do during this time to kind of button up their documents, button up their playbooks, so that when the time comes, they're ready to go at it. And this is a very unique opportunity for us to do that. So very, very important to connect with your team members and letting them know that you're there for them. I've heard stories across offices around the country where doctors have not connected with their team members at all. I mean, they got an email that they're being furloughed, and then all of a sudden they haven't heard from them, and there is some, and you want to make sure that you don't, your team members need you at this time more than ever. And if there is ways you can even a phone call with a hello would go a long way. So connecting with your team, discussing ideas about what you can do in terms of projects that have been on the shelf for a long time, and coming up with a strategy. One of the things that is happening quite a bit now, I think, as April moves forward and we come closer to opening dates, whenever they are, there's a big focus on how do we come back. There's going to be how do we come back in terms of seeing the patients that we need to see that we haven't seen over the last few months, and triaging that whole process. So there's a lot of thought. There's a lot of great webinars put together by amazing folks around the industry about what you need to do to have your playbook ready when you start seeing patients. What does that look like? What does your schedule need to look like? Capacity in terms of availability of providers, hours, making sure that you have the teams available to a lot of people are saying around the country that the pent-up demand is going to come back. People still need dental services. We think dental services are essential, and obviously not just emergencies. So there's going to be pent-up demand, and if you don't have a strategy to figure out how to meet that demand, you may see some attrition of your patients going to other offices, and there is a concern among the industry about that. So super important to have that playbook ready to go once you start back up, whenever that time is, and figuring that stuff out. One of the things that is happening quite a bit right now is teledentistry, and teledentistry telehealth has been around for a little while now, and I think it was just getting started, and the COVID-19 crisis has really given the impetus to deploy it in healthcare for sure. But teledentistry, I think, will take a big step forward during this crisis, and my suspicion is we're going to keep on with it even after this is over, as a way to communicate with our patients. There's a great platforms available today. I have interviewed some of the leaders of these platforms. Mouthwatch is a program. The teledentists there is Simplify has launched a new program as well. Patient Pop out of California has launched these programs. Check them out. See which ones do you like, and I think I would deploy them right away, because the best deployments are happening in teledentistry today. What I've seen in the DSO world is that you're picking a platform, they're emailing their customers, their patients, that, hey, we're available and ready for your emergency needs, and they're sending that email with the custom URL for patients to basically go into a virtual waiting room. And there is some mechanisms to try that out on how to use that virtual waiting room to do emergency consults, or non-emergency consults as well. There's a lot of orthodontists that are using the teledentistry platform to look at whether they need to ship new aligners, or if there's a lot of applications for it as well. I would check the platforms out. If you go to Patient Prism Academy, you will see my interviews with their CEOs of these leaders, and academy.patientprism.com. If you go there, you will see a section on teledentistry, and I think there's 5 interviews I've done with the 5 different companies that are doing this really well, and those are very, very informative. One interesting I have a 2-location practice that is on Patient Prism. They're also our CPA clients. What they have done, they have gone even further, and they have taken their external marketing, and they have changed 3 billboards in Tampa to tell people in town that we're open for emergencies. They have changed their entire AdWords campaigns to attract new patients, and basically provided the teledentistry link to that on their website as well as on their Google Ads. And it's interesting that these 2 offices are seeing 15 to 20 new patients per week, which is very interesting. So depending on where you are, some offices are going at it saying that, hey, we're going to attract new patients during this time, and we're gonna put them through our teledentistry platform, and we're going to advertise. Right now, advertising rates are coming down because there's not a lot of people bidding on those keywords. So it might be an interesting opportunity for you to test that out in your neighborhood, and keeping so that at least it pays for your skeleton crew's payroll, and that's important, right? Whatever you can get right now in cash is amazing, because you can now keep going and not have to use your loan proceeds. So super important. One of the things around marketing is going to be how do you calibrate your messaging on your website as well as everywhere that you show, because part of your comeback strategy is going to be convincing the patients of that, hey, you're ready, you have the right PPE, and this is your infection control strategy, and this is how you're going to take care of patients. And this is going to be super important. I think what we're seeing, I spoke to a group, a large group in Boston yesterday, and one of the things they're doing is really figuring out 2 things. One is, how are they going to obtain the PPE? Because it's going to be in shortage. And then how are they going to communicate with the patients that they are equipped to handle patients through adequate infection control and PPE within their offices. I think because dentistry is in that high risk category because of the aerosols and what happens and how much they travel, there has been some interesting studies coming out of China regarding recommendations of what dental practices would be required to have, and some of them are just completely outrageous. One recommendation was, we install negative pressure operatories. It's prohibitively expensive to have a negative pressure room inside an operatory. It could cost $150,000 an operatory. Nobody's going to do that. So there's some crazy ideas out there about what can we do, but securing PPE and having infection control. But one of the things that China did really well, and we're going to talk to some Chinese DSOs in the next few weeks. China did really well is figuring out how to get everybody tested. And until we have that mechanism in dentistry, I feel we're not going to come back all the way. I think we will have to figure out some mechanism where either our patients can go somewhere else to get quickly tested for both the tests, the antigen test and the antibody test, to figure out if you have a current infection or if you've already had an infection, you've cured it. There is some talk by Henry Schein right now that they've launched one test. They're planning to launch apparently another test. We don't know for sure. And somehow they haven't figured this out yet, but somehow integrating testing within the dental office environment, or having it somewhere else, because there's some issues regarding telehealth and who gives the prescription and so forth. But I think look out for that, because I think the offices that are going to figure this out first, when the restrictions get, the stay-at-home restrictions get dissolved or become less restrictive, you're going to need to figure out what your strategy is going to be to attract existing patients back to the office as well as new patients, and your PPE strategy, your infection control strategy, and your testing strategy needs to be developed so that you know what to look for. And if there is, we had this Boston group yesterday called Abbott directly and said, can you ship us the machines? and can you ship us the test? And they said, no, we can't, because we're going to go by priority. And the priority is hospitals right now, where we need the most amount of tests. So if there is ways, either through Henry Schein or anywhere else, for us as an industry to think about what can we do to put our patients' minds at ease, it's going to be super, super important. I think there's going to be some companies out there that are going to figure that out. And I think the earlier you figure this out, it's going to be easier for you to convince your team and your patients to feel safe again. Safety is really important today. I think we had this vote recently in Wisconsin, and one of the challenges people had in going to the votes was, do they feel safe? And if they don't feel safe, they're not going to go anywhere. And I'm hoping our leaders figure this out. But if they don't yet, I think it's upon us as an industry to figure this out, so that we can continue our journey. We can reopen and start seeing the patients, because the patients really need what we offer. Managing. So let me see, what topics do I have rest? Patient Prism Academy. I've listed that here. One of the things we're doing for this industry during this time period is we're not only producing almost 4 to 5 new videos and ebooks a week, but we're also and making them available on Patient Prism Academy. But we're also letting every single dental practice sign up for Patient Prism Academy for free for a 90-day period. And all you've got to do is basically go to academy.patientprism.com and enroll now, and you'll get a user ID and password. There's almost about 950 videos in there. About 50 of them talk about the COVID resources and all the different things, but 900 of them have to do with all the soft skills associated with running your dental practice. So we've got over 42 consultants and dental coaches there that have come up over the last 2 years, from ideas from case acceptance to hygiene to marketing to insurance, everything else under the sun. Anybody we found interesting in the space, we invited them to our studios. Trevor has come by and talked about SmileSource and your amazing platform. So we've got a lot of very interesting insights from industry leaders that have talked very abundantly and shared their knowledge with the industry. So while you're sitting home today and your team members are sitting home, I think this is a good opportunity for you guys to log on to Patient Prism Academy, enroll for free for 90 days, and learn as much as you can. Give us some ideas as well on what you would like to hear from us on our academy. And we are very committed during this time period to bring together every piece of information that would be a good idea. Even if it's far-fetched, right? For example, the COVID testing in your dental offices is far-fetched today, but it's an idea, and I think we should embrace every idea, no matter what it is, so that eventually we feel that we're prepared to come out of this crisis stronger than ever before, and we're absolutely ready during this time period with our teams, with our playbooks, and understanding where we are and where we need to be. Really, really important. I'll leave the room open for questions. One last point before we go to that is going to be really pay close attention. I'm going back to my CPA hat. Pay close attention to your metrics. Whatever systems you use, whether you use normal practice management, whether you use any kind of analytics tools, pay attention to your metrics and really go dig deeper into that, so that you know where you are and where you need to be and where you were before COVID-19, so that you can take this opportunity to really pivot your practice into something that it never was before, which means a well-oiled machine. And there's no better time. I am doing this myself with my companies, Patient Prism. We have almost daily calls about, can we pivot to really deliver a better product, a faster product, a cheaper product that could really drive behavior change at offices around the country. And Believe me, I've never had this much time to work on my business because I was always busy working in my business, and take this opportunity to look at this stuff and really look at where you are, where you can be. It's an incredible opportunity for us to drive our businesses forward and really have an incredible 2020 and even better 2021. So I'm ready to answer questions. I'm always available. Amol@patientprism.com is my email. I do get a lot of emails, but I try to respond to most of them every single day. But I'll take some questions as we go along.
Thanks, Paul. So I know you're always super available for all of us, so I do appreciate that. Not a lot of questions coming in yet, but I do have a couple for you. Is there any commitment for the Academy at Patient Prism? Is there any, if you do 90 days free, is there any commitment beyond that?
No commitment.
Okay,
and you can cancel any time. We intended to have that whole resource as a way to for people to get education, and so there's no commitment. If you need it for another 30 days, we'll provide that to you. So no commitment.
That's awesome. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities out there like that right now. So it's a good opportunity for people to work on their business, as you said, while they're not in it. Couple of things. I don't know if Trevor and Gary certainly probably have some thoughts and questions, but you talked about the testing that Henry Schein has, and they're trying to launch. And I have been in communication with that. For everybody watching, I've been in communication with Henry Schein, and they are pushing all those out to the hospitals and medical facilities that are on the front lines of fighting the COVID-19. So we'll have to kind of stay in touch on that and see how they're able to deliver that to our dentist members as things hopefully slow down. And I just had a thought when you're talking about how people come back to the office and feel safe. I think a part of it is that I think a real simple solution, and maybe Gary could share his thoughts on this, but even if we just stagger how patients come into a practice, instead of coming in on the hour for hygiene, maybe they come in every 10 or 15 minutes. So they're not co-mingling in a waiting room and have time to adjust things in the practice and get things cleaned up on a different schedule. So I think those are some of the things that we'll have to think about as we try to get dentists back in their practices, but still having some social distancing in place as well. I think that's going to be important for the first several months after we get rolling again. So Gary, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Tom, I agree with you. We're going to have to look at our schedules very differently. We're working on that right now this week as to how we're going to bring people in, keep that distancing, not having a bunch of people in the waiting room. It's going to present a new challenge. The workflow is certainly going to be different. Just have to see how it works out.
There's some praise here. Dr. Ford Gatkins is giving a little praise of the Academy, so he's a fan for sure. That's great. Thanks, Ford.
Well, I think having a plan is better. You're looking at your schedule, as you said earlier, but have a plan of action based on how you attract, based on how the workflow is, and have a playbook ready. That's I believe the key, because it could restart back up, and you're like all of a sudden, oh my God, I have no providers, or I have no assistants. And one of the challenges that I feel with this unemployment condition is, and I'll say it out, is that the federal deal is pretty sweet. It's $600 a week in addition to the state unemployment. There's people in certain states that are making $52,000 a year unemployment. I mean, that's on a yearly basis. So make sure that as you think about staffing, be in touch with them, because if somebody's making $4,000 a month sitting home, there's going to be some disincentive to come. So think about that as well as you put your playbook in place. So there's some interesting challenges that you think about of what happens during these times.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of people come on talking about staffing being a potential issue. You have folks that maybe were working as assistants who were let go or furloughed or laid off, and now they found employment somewhere else. So it may not be as accessible when we turn the lights back on. Trevor, any takeaways for you or questions for Amol?
No, I think that it's really important that we step back, and I know that a lot of folks are still mired in the loan discussions and do I take the loan? What do I do? And I think your advice is sage. There's no right answer. So do the application, get access to the funding. If you don't need it, don't take it, but have a plan. Not having a plan is not the answer, for sure. So I think that was wise.
Thank you.
So yeah, so just on a personal story. So my wife was evaluating something on one of our finance things. I think it was our bank, and we have 2 open credit cards that we never use. Don't even have the physical cards for. And she was going to cancel. I'm like, well, let's just let's hold off on that right now. Let's keep all the credit available until this thing settles out.
I've seen some people draw down on their lines of credit entirely. If you have a line of credit that you have $100,000 line for your practice, and you've only drawn down 20,000, I've seen some practices draw down the whole thing because there's fear that they might just freeze. So again, the interest rates are low right now. The prime rate is pretty low because of all the Federal Reserve cuts. So it's the cost and the peace of mind that you have cash available. It might be a good idea to draw down on them based on some sort of a projection of what you will be in at least 3 scenarios. Best case, we open May 1st. Worst case, I don't want to even say that. And middle case, somewhere. Have those scenarios ready and prepare for the worst case, and have the cash ready.
What was it called? Plan for the best, prepare for the worst.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you have to think, Gary, and you already, guys, you moved up your data, I think, a few days from when you thought you might open, but you have to think that they're going to have to let dentists go back to work.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. There may be some restrictions on how they practice, how they bring patients in and out, the kind of PPE they wear, but they're going to have to let them get back to work. Maybe sooner than restaurants, as an example, right? They're going to have to let them get out there.
The restaurants are also tough because of the number of people that show up.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting until we have a good testing mechanism in place. I think testing is going to be super important. I'm glad. I mean, I think some of the stuff our industry is going to have to take on themselves. I don't know how much they can, but I think we'll have to proactively figure out how to get patients in, because again, there's going to be a lot of bottlenecks. And,
yeah.
But Texas, I hear Texas is going to open sooner than later.
That's not necessarily a good thing.
I don't know whether that's good. I don't know. But
what are you hearing there?
Well, so they are still saying that we haven't hit our peak yet, and the governor would like to reopen some things now, which is fearful for a lot of us that we will see an additional spike. We haven't seen the worst of it, and they want to open things back up. So that's a little scary.
One little thing that I forgot, the CARES Act has very interesting provisions about taxes regarding carryback of losses. That was I think the last time we had carryback was 2 years ago. So there is some opportunity for you to if there's any losses that you had even in 19 or 18 to carry them back to get some additional cash from refunds. So talk to your CPA again about those carryback provisions, because you were carrying those losses forward in the past years. If you file your 19 return, if you file your 18 return, there might be opportunities to amend those returns. And if you had those losses, even in non-dental related stuff that you could carry back, you may want to take a look at that stuff.
Do you think they'll hold the July date for taxes? Mal, do you think they'll extend it?
I don't know. IRS is usually the very last people to do anything, but they come July. I think July 15th they'll hold it. They might have you file an extension, and they might have something around that. I think the October 15th date might be extended. The extended deadline for filing returns, it might go to December, and depending on where things are. But I think they're taking as a wait and watch approach to see what happens, because the IRS operations have been disrupted significantly with no revenue coming in, and it's so they're usually, you'll know in July if it's going to be extended.
Right. Any further thoughts, Gary? Anything from you?
No, I just want to say thank you, Amol. That was all really helpful stuff. Got a bunch of notes here to go back to my CPA on. So thank you for your time and for sharing. And I'll probably be reaching out and taking advantage of some of your offer there. So thank you.
Absolutely. I hope everybody takes advantage of it. And we're truly interested in providing good education, good knowledge to everybody during this time. And please do take advantage.
Well, yeah, appreciate it. Trevor, closing thoughts?
Thank you for being here. And I look forward to seeing some of the members tonight for Fireside Chat with Dr. Maroon. And Tom, I'll see you back here tomorrow for Expert Insights.
Yes, sir. With Eric Morin, Tower Leadership. Should be very interesting as well. He has a different perspective to share, I'm sure. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Great job. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.